Yes, This song is called Be the Change, inspired by the words of Mahatma Gandhi, who lived for peace and not violence, and told us to be the change we wish to see in the world.
Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and Ramon. Wow, we have a lot of stuff going on in the world. We've got the big-ass storm over in New York, which is all over by now, which is... you guys are all picking up and cleaning up from that, and wow. So we're recording this on the day before Halloween, and the energies are...
And a couple days before your birthday.
Yeah, energies are starting to ramp up here, and...
How old are you turning to?
51.
That's it?
Yeah, that's all. You thought I was older, didn't you? Yeah.
Well, you still got another 100 years
or so. Now, in this vehicle, then I'll try something else out. Maybe I'll go for a sports model next time. Yeah, I don't know. So, I think we're just going to get right into this show tonight. We've got somebody with us that is probably going to knock your socks off. This guy, first time I heard him, I was like, wow, okay, we definitely got to get him on the show. He's been on quite a few different shows here recently. Well, I won't say quite a few, but he's been on a few. He's been on Carrie Cassidy's show, and I guess just yesterday, Vinny Eastwood's, and let's see, I've heard him in a few other places too, but he's starting to get out there and about. I guess he got drug out of the closet by Nick Begich, who talked this guy back into coming out into the public area and starting to share some of his wisdom and knowledge and experience. And I want to thank Nick very much for doing that, because this guy's got something to share in the world today. Well, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, all those places
YouTube
like that.
channel.
YouTube, Vimeo, 100thmonkeysradio.com, and all those great places. And also, I want to thank all our members for being members in the first place, for being able to make it possible for Ramon and I to do this show and continue doing this show and bringing guys like our guest tonight to you.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
So tonight we have Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Now this guy, I'm not going to go too deeply into his bio, but he has been around the block, to say so.
Say the least.
Yeah. He worked for the government quite a bit, done a lot of farming, which is some really awesome stuff, and we'll definitely poke into that. We're gonna be talking about preparing for the future, mind, body, and soul is kind of what we titled this show. So what we're going to start off with here is, I think, the mind, body, and soul. That just screams consciousness to me. I don't know. Richard Allen Miller, thank you for joining us. How are you doing tonight?
Well, my stock response would be that I'm going bald. Unnatural causes, I might add.
So we've got something in common then, because all three of us are going bald.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, but I pulled mine out. That's the deal. You know, I got technical papers on the mind right now. So, in fact, that's a really basic question, about mind control and what's going on in the world today. And before you can even respond to something like that, you need a better definition of what you're going to presume the mind is. Good luck. And I am writing a new book for Nick. It's my third in a series. It's called The Non-Local Mind in a Holographic Universe. Now, your choice of universes, whether it's quantum or holographic, is arbitrary. They're not real. They're just models that would allow you to approach what the mind is and what its possible potentials are. Good luck on, working that way. A quantum universe would suggest, and quantum consciousness would suggest, entanglement and decoherence by definitions. Whereas a holographic universe, instead of dealing with space-time and subsets of what we call advanced string theory, you would be working in a universe that deals on the way information, not space-time, folds into or out of itself. And in a holographic universe, then time and space are simple subsets, which means you have precognition, you have awarenesses of your past and future. How does that work? Well, we talk about epigenetics and supercodes on the DNA. There is genetic memory inherent in the way the coding sequences will lock down in a double helix. And there are, now we don't know where they are, but we know they're there, supercodes, like a gene will know that it came from mom rather than dad, creating a different kind of subsets of possibilities. Now, a hologram, let's start with a hologram. A hologram is really, the two primary measures is called information and resolution of information. That's why you use fractal math on that. You have a certain Mandelbrot generator that's, let's say, a given 1 inch wide or whatever. And if it's 1 inch wide, next one up is going to have to be 3.5 inches, not 7 or something of that nature. In other words, there is a relationship in the scaling sequences where you choose to subset into your resolution point. Consciousness has been broken into memes, which are, the physical, the emotional, the intellectual, the archetypal. Actually, in fact, there are 8 basic neurologic circuits that Timothy Leary recommended that are now cataloged as memes. And when I trained Navy SEALs, I was SEAL Unit number 1. I was their physicist. We chose individuals not on how big they were, how many bridges they could blow up, but on their intuition. That was the first place we started. We wanted an individual that could go inside himself and without a doubt have a center of knowledge that was independent of space and time. You call that ESP, but in fact you can access these states with hypnosis. And so I have a first book out that Nick published because they wanted this original stuff that's now actually being used as a protocol for all plebes. Originally, when we first started, it was called SEAL Corporation out of Amherst. And I was the individual developing tests and ways of protocols of how do we select out of 280,000 grunts, which 2% am I going to focus in on and see where we have a gem or a jewel and train them, make them supermen. And it all starts with intuition. Now, there's your mind. You have several minds. For example, your gut is convoluted. It has neurotransmitters. In fact, you do a lot of thinking from your gut. Dogs, animals, work with appetites and desires right from the gut. That's what drives them. On a more high level, when you start using your upper brain, now what happens is that you're playing chess and you create scenarios of possibilities. And with possibilities become probabilities. And so you create a doubt. And once you have a doubt, that becomes a thought form that becomes actually, in fact, real. That's why we have in a sane, conscious world statistical inference, whereas in altered states of consciousness, you have abilities that you can do that you cannot do in a conscious state. And one of them deals with space-time, precognition, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairascension. You'll notice that all the information that you would glean from these states come back into consciousness via some form of hallucination. But if you were a bird working with a paracoupling avian mechanism for watching magnetic fields, I believe that we have that same ability, and we're simply not consciously aware of it. But we know where magnetic north is when we go inside ourselves. And so the key is, where do you go? And that's the kinds of studies I did. I did those kinds of studies for a bunch of years for the Navy. I started as a Navy SEAL and training the SEALs and then later astronauts. And then they moved me into Navy intelligence, where I went into anesthesiology and did the mind control studies at the University of Washington. In the lab next to me was Delgado. He had chip implants in monkeys. Later he moved on to Harvard to work on higher primates. Is that the better way to put it? And, like dolphins and man. And then next to the other lab was Dr. Moore. He was doing ketamine, telepathy, and BZ studies, the gas. I did all the microwave studies and some other weird things that we can get into later. How's that for a starting opening salvo?
There we go. So back to mind. Now, we have an amazing creative ability within our minds in this hologram. I really like the hologram model as far as
it allows you to see something going on outside the
right.
body, like Schumann's resonance and some kind of dialogue going on with amorphous semiconductors in your brain. Your brain, I was going to say this and I didn't finish that thought. A hologram is defined as n dimensions of information in n-1 dimensions. It's a abbreviation system like Dirac notation or something in quantum mechanics. It's a way of the way information, not matter, folds into or out of itself. And now that puts a whole different spin on the nature of information. For example, in the Bose-Einstein condensate, where you have these two particles at opposite ends of the universe that are somehow simply connected, I would rather use a holographic universe where it was a single particle with two different cameras on it. And that means you have two different resolutions of the hologram. And that's what we often do, is we confuse when something's emotional as opposed to intellectual. And to get further in that concept for one moment, that's why most more primitive tribes, like the Hopi and the Aborigines, would see dreamtime and dream states as being more real than physical, because the emotional plane is the physical plane with more detail. And that's how it works. It's a resolution. And with your higher self, or the other 9/10 of your cerebral cortex trying to get the attention of consciousness, it will create things like illness is a way to get your attention. And once there is a dialogue between those two, there's no need for the illness. That's right. Jungian psychotherapy, and it works to look at things that way, because the consciousness or the superconscious, the higher self, if it doesn't get your attention, it will escalate until it does.
So many people are working on, touting that whole, the secret thing, creating your own reality, manifestation, all this crap. And it from what I have seen and actually experienced myself up to a certain point, it always seems like the negative in our society, when we're trying to create, or when we're just living our lives, the thought forms, the negative seems to create more effectively or with more power in the world around us than the positive.
You might have. That's a binary system. And then there's a base 3, which has no primes, and a base 10 that has exponential. The coordinate system that you've chosen belies your initial assumed truths and beliefs, the way you were whelped. And that's the other problem, being able to change a belief system like you would a pair of clothing, as using your drivers of it's positive or it's negative. I used to, when I raised my daughter, she had absolutes. Daddy, I love this, and Daddy, I hate that. And I gently moved her toward the belief of preference, because if you think you hate that, I'll bet I can find something even worse. And, like the idea being that it was always in relative to something else. With that said, Christianity and that form of mentat tends to make absolutes, or black and white, rather than, what is it called, 200 Shades of Gray. And, okay, well, the metaphor is what I'm looking for. Okay. And if you have a different mentat, in terms of how you approach what's going on, like everything happens for a reason, bong, and everything leads to something better, bong, bong, those kinds of belief systems will allow you to do things that you can't in your current state fare. If you were a staunch Christian and two aliens walked in the door, what the bleep, you see them. That's because, how does that go, the old Selma cartel? I wouldn't have seen it
if I hadn't believed it.
Yeah, there it is.
Right.
It all starts on the inside. The physical plane is not real. What is real is imagination. And that's why all your saints have told you to practice meditation to train your mind. Because you're like a little brat, unruly kid running all over the place. And you push here and you push there. And what that's all about, and why thoughts don't last very long, is because when you try to create a thought form to push it into physical reality, there is a inertia pushing back. And so this has to do with levels of consciousness in your resolution of information.
So do you think we're also fighting against the collective consciousness too?
Oh, you mean shortcuts going to grandma's house through the woods? When you do shortcuts, there's risks. And the collective unconscious, I think of man, is basically joy. The heart has three basic emotions that I can tell. The heart, which is different than the brain, the mind. The heart would be, and there are metaphors of the heart in your body. You have several. This all comes out of Barefoot Doctor and, poking with needles. Your heart has yes, no, and wow. And those emotions at one level are what we're talking about as your good and bad. Yes, I want that. No, I don't want that. And astonishment. Now, astonishment is the joy of the heart. Not the yes or the no, sex, whatever. What's really is the unexpected wow. Make that a capital wow. That's the aha. By the way, we were talking about lysergic acid amide earlier. That is the neurotransmitter that connects dots. And here's the bad news. The bad news is the dots are arbitrary in the way they can be connected, because the brain is a four-dimensional hologram of 5-space. You can change the movie.
What do you mean by 5-space?
Sliders, all possibilities. You go here, and you look through your brain from here, and that's what the vision is. You go from there, and that's what it is. You go where you currently are, and we have the same movie, Horror on Elm Street. Are you getting that?
Yeah. How is it?
In other words, you have to take personal responsibility. The big Hopi saying is, man does not have rights, he has responsibilities. He doesn't have a right to be free. He has a responsibility to be free. And the Hopi would say, man has the responsibility for the thoughts he chooses to entertain. And so you need to discipline your mind. That is the first step toward being a super soldier. You want to do it? Start there. Take responsibility for your thoughts and focus on them and change them if they're not appropriate or they're counterproductive. Of course you have insecurities, and of course you have guilt, and of course you have karma and all the other words that would try to give you an excuse for why you're into self-destruct. You want to take the drug, but you don't want to have the bad part of it. Why are you doing it? You need to ask these kinds of questions. Exactly. And most people haven't even begun any kind of dialogue, internal landscaping.
Right.
That's where you start. Start laying out a foundation for common, landmarks. Like, oh, here I have a lot of owie, and over there, my father didn't appreciate me, and over here, you start to have union with James Hillman, one of my teachers, has written an incredible book called The Soul's Code, In Search of Character and Calling. The stag and the unicorn in the forest go. Soul and spirit are within matter.
Yeah, so, but we have a tremendous, I don't know, but it's just kind of a reaction, and I think this is part of the programming that everybody's gone through, to externalize everything initially. The first reaction,
because when you're born, they hit you, and then they take you away and fingerprint you, or whatever they do. They don't do it like a puppy. Notice how a dog has a different kind of emotion. Is it because of his brain or the way he was whelped? Steve Gaskins might approach it that way. He wrote Monday Night Class and later formed The Farm and wrote a very important book called Spiritual Midwifery. It's the way we're birthed, way we're brought in. You can do rebirthing. You can do rituals. They call that, in magic, pathworking. There's all different ways to approach soul making. That's another word used in transpersonal psychology. And all of it is about taking personal responsibility for your own evolution. It's not going to happen with God. It's not like that. It's you are going to be the one that at some point, kicking and screaming or quietly in the night, whatever, you can take responsibility. You start with training the mind.
So how would you, a beginner, someone who's just starting to listen, how would you tell them to start training their mind?
Okay, the way I did it. Let's start with, I'm 50 years old. I'm 68 now. I'm 50 years old. I have not been meditating all my life. I would like to have the brain of someone that has meditated for 50 years. How do I do that? Toys. Okay, I'm a physicist. So we're going to take a shortcut to Grandma's house. And we'll use brain drivers. Because, for example, brain drivers I did CAT scans on my brain, and Persinger, you can quote to Persinger's work. Persinger shows that someone that's meditating for 50 years has a different kind of a brain pattern than those that are not. And I'm not going to talk about Norm Shealy and so many micro-Gauss magnetic fields. We're going to go there next year. But I'm going to suggest that you set up your viewpoint in a different place in the brain, which is normally associated with bliss states. Now, meditation and bliss states are very important, but they're not the whole thing. The whole brain is a massive crystal on top of let's say, your body, which is an antenna. Your DNA is a three-dimensional hologram of force space. That's who you were, who you are, and who you will be. It's an encoding of the way information. And so the brain is a four-dimensional hologram of five space, and predicated on how well you can navigate in your own consciousness, you can literally change the field. In different words, it was my great-grandfather that said to Rudolf Steiner, as J.L. Nelson, he said, quote, "We are no longer at war in the physical world, that if you wish to change the world, you change yourself, and so changes the world." And that's the way it works. It starts from the inside and is projected outward, and it's time, now that you understand some of it, it's time for you to get your buns off the ground and start doing some real work in training your mind. Once you've done that, other things start to reveal, and then the wonder of, time isn't real. Basically how time works. Robert Ornstein, he said it was a duration of consciousness. What does that mean? Well, it's the way you remember how we started this program to what I have to say right at this moment. It's the way you wrap your proteins. And the fact that you have two brains, really, and a new adult, a little bottleneck down there, and you're going to do a holographic thing, so it's got to go over here, and it's got to go over there, and it's going back and forth, and blah, blah, blah. It takes a period of consciousness in the way you're wrapping those proteins to create an image of a feeling of time. Time is not real. That's Lawrence Lashon, the medium, the mystic, and the physicist. Space, time, and ego. And in the Apollo 13 mission studies, that was the first thing I proved with Edgar Mitchell when I was at Mission Control doing the ESP studies. And we finally had someone far enough in space, had a mass between the Earth and the space capsule, the moon, so that we could do studies on attenuation and or hysteresis of time lapsing. We found that the concepts of psi energy was a more fundamental form of knowledge base or a different layer or resolution of the hologram. That's how we chose to see what's really going on. This all came from Dr. Mueller and Riesel. That's my first book, ESP Induction Through Forms of Self-Hypnosis. That was the first protocol. The Navy SEAL comes to a fork in the road. They drop down into this specific state of consciousness, and then within 10 seconds, their movement decision is 3 sigma error coefficient. That means there's a 99.99975% probability of making the right decision. How can you do that? The second book I've written that's just going to press this month is called Power Tools for the 21st Century. And these are the 8 protocols, starting with foods. That's, if you want to be a spiritual entity, you've got to have something to launch from, because your physical body is a scalar, is that a right word? A reflection of your spiritual body, which is up in more detail. And I have to tell you, I don't go to fat doctors.
Yeah.
Give me a break, man. Is that man going to be able to help me?
Right.
Well, what's wrong with that picture? And actually, medicine is in disarray anyway. It's run by insurance companies. In the last in the last 2 years, I have had 9 major surgeries. I have titanium in almost every limb of my body. One arm isn't even real. There's no elbow or anything. Wow. You can't tell that. The bad news is I can't pick my nose. The good news is nobody notices because it's only 4 inches difference. My grandchildren are talking about turning me into a wind chime. I don't know.
Oh, jeez.
I know, really. What an image, sitting there tinkling in the breeze.
So what are these entrainment tools? We're talking hemisync and that sort of thing?
Oh, yeah. Holosync, hemisync, yeah, brain drivers. Yeah, you start with brain drivers. Brain drivers will allow you to witness your behavior. Once you're able to step back and witness your behavior, now you have a new power tool. Not about the brain drivers. Now you have mythic living. You can surgically reach in and change a belief like you would a pair of clothing. I have a pair of bell-bottom pants I'm never going to throw away. I will never fit in them again. A 32-inch waist, and I'm down to 37, but I'll never get back down to 32. But why would I not throw that pair of jeans away? Because they represent, like Christianity or a belief system, something that is very familiar and comfortable. But when you're in the middle of Iran, with bullets whizzing up in the northern part of Iran, northern part of Iraq.
I was wondering what Iran.
I was there a long time ago looking for that artifact. That's what the second Bush got. He got that artifact. That was what it was all about. And his father didn't have tomography, so they couldn't locate it. We, in Navy intelligence, even in the 70s, knew about the artifact. It had been written about by the Catholic Church over 100 years earlier. And Yazidis, Aleister Crowley, referred to it with Aiwas. Primarily, there was an artifact in the northern part of Iraq, and that's when Bush got on that aircraft carrier, the second Bush, with his uniform and all his little bullshit, and he said, we won the war, we got it, well, the war's over. Only the war didn't really end after that. It was all then about a political thing about, I think, probably trying to break China financially. They did. But that's what I see is going on. It was that artifact up there, which is basically a get-out-of-jail card. The worry I have.
Well, what is the artifact?
What's that? It's like a Stargate. It's not a Stargate. I don't know what it is. I knew about it because Joseph Isaiah wrote a book on the secret tradition of the Yazidis out of the Vatican. It's on what's called devil worship. And it's about a pre-Christian devil worshiping cult that had a doorway that little demons came in to and fro. And, what would that suggest to you as an artifact? So everybody, of course, wanted to get it because it was written about in many different things, and the Catholic Church knew about it, but nobody knew where it was. The catacombs up there are really quite complex, and the only way they actually identified where it was with tomography from space. That's what it's all about. I've been to Antarctica. I've been to all of those places. I can tell you what's going on there, too. But, it's the thing is, people don't have a clue that there's other things going on here on our planet right in front of us, and we're not even noticing it. For example, we're right now in the middle of a major global event with weather changes. Oh, go figure. And nobody's talking about it like that. We talk about the Frankenstorms and what it just did to New York. Watch what this summer is going to do to Asia and Africa in terms of starvation this spring.
You think it has something to do, like during the Depression, they had the Dust Bowl, and I think that it was a direct result of the consciousness of humanity. Everybody was so depressed and everything, and so it was reflected in the world around them. You think that
the universe went to hell, and then you got depressed? Who knows, the chicken or the egg? The bottom line is they're simply connected, and there is, and it's a group thought form, and actually. It doesn't have to be bad. In fact, you can use validly with brain drivers those litany of everything happens for a reason and everything leads to something better. And when you choose to look at things from that point of view, now you have a different set of rules in terms of how you want to look at what's going on. And you have choices. That's the difference between free will and true will. Man doesn't really have free will. He has true will. So there it is.
What's the difference? I don't know if I get it.
What, okay. What do you mean?
Free will and true will.
That is the 8th chapter in Power Tools with my ontology of mystical states, which is on my website. That part of chapter 8 is on my website. What I left off is the difference between free will and true will. Now, free will would suggest that you have syntactic modes of consciousness and complete awareness of the options. But you don't. Because you don't, it's not free anymore, it's true. That means you do the best you can with where you've got. And that's what Aleister Crowley called telema, the love of will. There was eros, philo, agape, and telema, the love of will. Do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. I would say that magic is a higher form of physics. It was reserved for the ultra elite of Europe for centuries. Not one, two, for centuries. And it was only this last century when Aleister Crowley suggested the use of drugs that it fell into disrespect. However, in magic, and when you talk about magic, like the way your wife would drive your car, it is a form of cybernetic anthropology, and her form of mentat thinking is magic. She's not thinking about how an internal engine combustion works. She knows that if she gets into this side of the car and puts a key into this slot and does this, there are certain expectations of what's going to happen next. And that is the way the Aborigines live. That's called magical philosophy. That's the thinking from a magical anthropological point of view. It's like adding a mystery school into physics. And physics has been the leading religion of the world for this last century because of technology. But really, there are mammals on this planet, in my opinion, that are more evolved technically than man. The dolphin, for example. And the orca, higher in the food chain. There's relationships in the scheme of things, and I really don't think that this song is about us. Little Carly Simon joke. I think it's about cetacean. There are 4 mammals that are actually on this planet. You want to talk about consciousness? Now, okay, the dolphin have a little thing they do called sonoluminescence, which is sonar bubbles. They blow these little tiny sonar bubbles, and they create rings with them, and they play with them, and they move them up, and they move them down. And then, when they let them go, they pop to the surface of the water into bright white light, which MIT has only this last year duplicated as a form of cold fusion using heavy water. Now, that's what the dolphin are doing, is their art form. Their language, I was in with Carl Sagan. He took me in to John Lilly's labs, and because of my preference for memory, I have a photographic memory thing and languages, and I was there 10 days, breaking down, listening to the clicks and whistles with oscilloscopes, trying to break down cadence patterns and groupings of certain bursts of certain frequency bands. Excuse me. And I discovered within 10 days that their language was a form of Clifford algebra, their dimensional map. They had a redundancy coefficient that was 10 times more efficient than Hebrew, which I speak fluently. Avram Moles, French mathematician, has written on that, called aesthetic perception and information theory. And basically, Orca is higher on the food chain, herds the dolphin to eat him. Well, it has a cerebral cortex that's twice the size of man, and he's firing 60% of it. Now that is God. Not our God, but going places man will never comprehend, which by definition is God, that which cannot be known. Now, with that said, then you start looking at the pilot whale and the manatee. All 4 cetacean have bigger brain cases than man. Then you start to look at the soil like I did as a farmer, and you're noticing the mycorrhiza, the habitat of viruses and mycelium and, hoop-de-doo and little bugs and whatever. And they forms this thing we'll call Chicago. It has a kind of consciousness that's different than New York. And what's happening is that it has a type of consciousness that we don't even get yet.
Right.
That's Gaia. It's like a conscious entity, and it's dialoguing with the sun, and the sun is dialoguing with the galactic center. The galactic center, listen, there's a relationship going on here that we have not even begun to explore. So when they talk about aliens, they ask me, well, do you believe in aliens? My response would be, how could I not?
Right.
But with that reservation, I would say what Carl Sagan said. They're also from much further away and much closer than you realize. It's not about space-time and Rigel 4. That's crazy thinking. That's linear, and there's something more going on here. Is that where you wanted to go with consciousness?
Yep.
We're just getting started. Oh, yes. How did the movie say? And there will be blood.
So what? This is an area I'm very, very interested in. What can you tell us about telepathy and the work the military has done on it?
Yeah, well, there's 2 forms of paranormal. There's ESP and PK phenomena. Okay, that's Dr. Reich. And PK happens outside the body, levitation, apportation. It has nothing to do with you. And inside the body is all you. You got it broken into 5 categories. You got clairvoyance, which has, different subsets like clairaudience, clairascension, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairascension. It's one of the 5 senses. In other words, it has received information. In clairvoyance, the information came from the outside and was brought to you. Telepathy is where you transmit. You are the transmitter of the information going outwards. So telepathy is when you're transmitting. 4th stage telepath would be someone that could radiate mindset that would change the reality of, let's say, 4 city blocks. That's what a 4th stage telepath is. And there are different levels of telepathy. Then you had astral projection, where what you have is you take your body, a substitute, call it a sub-body, with a silver cord or something, and it goes to the place and gets the information. Then you have precognition or retrognition, where you do the same thing with telepathy and clairvoyance, except you do it with time. It's independent of time and space. And then finally, you have radiesthesia, which is using an external device like tarot cards or I Ching to throw the bones, and somehow those patterns speak back to you with internal state functions. Now, did it come from the bones and I Ching cards? No. Did the information come from over there to you? No. Did you take the information and put it over there? No. Really, the information is simply connected, and what you're doing is shifting your state of relationships of consciousness to the resolution of the hologram, and the way the information might be brought into via hallucination, extrasensory perception. It is an ESP. Your body has all kinds of other sensory motor things going on. Microtubules on the body. You poke it on this arm and something happens on that arm. There's no known way those two are connected with nerve ganglia or other circulatory systems, so we invent a new one, microtubule. And the thing is, there are resonant cavities. It's electromagnetic. And man is basically a scintillating waveform in space. He's not real. And your consciousness is something way more and or less, predicated on which level of the microscope you're choosing to look at it. I have totally shocked you. I'm sorry about that. Silence on the other end, like, did they cut me off? Are they bored? Did I lose them? What happened? It's awful when I can't watch the crowd and the rustle of body language and NLP. Yeah.
Ramon, you had more on that?
Yeah, I'm very interested in how to begin that process of
Well, that's my book. Runs it out, and if you're very good to me, I will give you in the new printing an article that Nick is going to put as an appendix on a reprint, on an article, a standalone on the protocols for Appendix A that I wrote for Nexus Magazine. I did last weekend a big workshop, Urban Survival Skills, with Nick Begich. And the way they called ESP, for all the Christians out there, they called it Critical Decision-Making Power Tools as used by Navy SEALs. Everybody came in to take that one, because if you're in the middle of zombie land, East LA, when they're out of food, let's say, what do? Do you go right or left? If you stop and think, you're going to blow it. And so you need skills that tell you how to connect in with your instincts. That's a good word. And work more with spirit, like a wolf does. When you do that, now you're not making any errors, because like a wolf, when you're working with spirit, you don't make errors. You are simply being. That's what the difference is between a normal human being and a Superman. Working with having a sense. Go ahead, Raymond.
Sorry. When I've heard a lot where people say your heart has, 60%.
The heart is another organ. I haven't figured out what a triple warmer is yet, but there's the no internal state functions. The heart has to do with love, and the problem with that is in the Jewish. I'm a Hermetic Kabbalist. The Jewish language, there is Gimel, which is G. Gimel is the camel. It's L, 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 L. 5 L's in the desert sand. That's why they call it the camel, or the tracks in the desert. And what those 5 L's stand for in Jewish mystical systems is light, life, love, liberty, and law. And so they're all important, not just love. And the bottom line is, with love, I got a little rap on that one, actually the Greek were the ones that elevated that concept of love into eros, philo, agape, and telema, and the love of true will. That is doing your soul's code, your purpose in life. The character part is the nooks and crannies and how you choose to handle that. That's spirituality. Not what you do, but how you do it. And that's all James Hillman. Basically, what you're trying to do is form a union with your higher self, a type of self-realization that allows you to become more than you are with normal consciousness. And at some point, you can be so enlightened that you can move to a different place in the brain and literally change the movie.
So, Ramon, I think you were trying to go to ask about the magnetic field that the heart has. Is that where you're going with that?
The magnetic field, and also it has 60% brain cells.
Well, that's gut does that. It's not the heart; it's the gut that has that. And you'll notice that the gut is also convoluted. It looks like a brain. Basically, to take that into mind control concepts, Monsanto is now altering a gene in wheat as a weapons company, not GMOs, to affect and activate a bacteria, a specific bacteria in your gut called T. gondii. You got it from a cat. It's normally inert. When it gets activated, you become a Walmart shopper. No, I'm just kidding. But it's why everybody is so complacent. You know, it isn't about the gluten. It's about the opiates. You know, it's always about the opiates. And so I don't eat wheat of any kind. And let me tell you, there's good reason, because Monsanto was never a pharmaceutical house. It was always and will always be a weapons company. It started with 2,4-D and paraquat and then graduated to Agent Orange. It made Agent Orange. And wait, that worked pretty good as a weapon. And so then they took over our seed. Then they started messing with GMOs. And now they're going directly for the heart of America, just like out of Videodrome. Want the heart of America. You go right straight for someone's gut. That's the lower brain. And people aren't even aware. And kids, the young kids, are all hypnotized like something out of, what was that, Serenity movie, where the little girl is triggered by an icon like golden arches and she goes into a fighting machine. That's essentially what an alien is. It's Walmart shoppers. Absolutely no conscience at all. There is what I would call a zombie. It's not about money. It's China. That's what the financial wars are all about, trying to break China. China owns 50% of Grants Pass, where I live. How much do they own up in Centralia? It's awful. And there has been a literal war, of which Greece and Spain may be some of the casualties in breaking China in the financial war. If you want to look at it from a metaphorical point of view, realize that your minimum wage right now, what is it, $8.25? And for the same labor in China, they'll do it for 24 cents. Now, what happens next? It's not about how much money they're taking home. It's about a war going on for your desires. And they are attacking us via our food. And so that's the first level, is physical plane. You start with your water and your food choices. Then you move to your emotional set. And that's where brain drivers and biofeedback come in. Once you've gotten into those stages and are able to, using brain drivers, witness, you go up in your layers of awareness in the power tools and the 8 levels of consciousness, and now you're working with mythic living. Mine last year, I had 9 surgeries in 2 years, and while I did my surgeries, I restored my Datsun 280Z. When I replaced the rust in this floorboard, I put a pin in that hip, that kind of thing. And I used my car as a metaphor And my car is just so cool to drive now. I am in better shape at 68 than when I was 50. And my goal is to be like Norm Shealy when I'm 80. And anybody can do it. It's as simple as starting with taking personal responsibility for your own evolution. And if you want to evolve, you start with the body, because you have to have a platform from which to launch.
So a lot of people talking about 2012 and the shift, the shift in consciousness is, what do you see there? Do you see a global shift in consciousness happening?
Well, what do you think?
Well, I personally think, I think something's happening.
That's why people are listening right now. They want something more. Everybody is now becoming what we call true seekers. They want something more than the physical plane. And that is only going to be available with the exploration of consciousness and the nature of what consciousness is and what it is not. Good luck.
Yeah.
It's a long, hard wool. And my SEALs, what made them true supermen was the enlightenment part, not, I've got one for you too. I'm semi-expert in demolition. On my website, I have actually 9/11, where we actually show the one building that fell was within 3% of freefall. That would take my team a minimum of 3 months rigging that explosion. And so why the public thinks that the Pentagon was hit by an airplane, I never figured out where the wings went. It's just the whole thing is crazy.
They're in my house.
There you go. You and J.B. Cooper, huh? D.B. Cooper. Come over for a visit. He's from Centralia, too, by the way. Just a little neighborhood there.
Yeah.
Neighborhood joke. Yeah, the wings are at my house. Yeah, I'm wearing them. That part, I don't understand why the public, even the zeitgeist, 9/11, showed everything. Why did not the media jump on that like stink on shit? Why did they let it go? Not care somehow, that it wasn't important somehow. I actually went to 9/11.
We don't have a free media anymore, though.
No, they don't. Even Al Jazeera isn't doing it. There's of the 18 presidents, candidates that are running for president, including Ralph Nader, none of them have been asking the right questions. As a physicist, my first immediate question would be Fukushima and the exposed plutonium in reactor 4 still leaking radioactivity in the bay. And you look from space at Japan, it's on a precipice. It's within your lifetime. You're 47, whatever, 51. In your lifetime, in the next, Japan will no longer exist as a continent. They just purchased 2 major islands north of the Aleutians up in the Kamchatka Sea from Russia. The actual landmass is bigger than Japan itself. How they plan to move 40 million people from the prefect of Tokyo, I have no clue. But watch what's happening next. The problem I have is if that plutonium goes down in the ocean with Japan, Earth will no longer be inhabitable. That's why they have Mars. Really, the whole thing is crazy. They had kamikazes that were ready to go in and try to cap it off before another event happened. And right now, we're having events all around us. And the weather is Exhibit A. The worst weather in 800 years. I'm looking at it from space, and I can look at it like Tony Van Zandt did. You can look at the Earth and the color of it and how dry it is. Now, here's the weird part. I have on my website a picture of the Earth and the Moon, and then I have a little ball between them on the amount of water that's on Earth, so you can see how much water, land mass-wise, solid volume. And then I brought a fourth ball in on the amount of water on Mars. There is more water on Mars right now than there is on Earth. That was last week's discovery, and it's a new form of structured water that is a slushy ice at 100 Fahrenheit, degrees below zero. It's an interesting world that we're going into.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
and I don't have answers. I think that man will survive. I'm just very concerned about the New World Order's prime directive. You know, there's too many people on Earth, and that before anything changes, you know, civil rights return to you, advancements in science, medicine, whatever, that 50% of the world has to die. Who makes those decisions?
Exactly. Well, Rick, we're at the top of the hour, and we'll continue on in the second segment here. Wow, a lot of stuff here to chew on, guys. So keep listening, and we'll continue this on. And
if you're not a member, you can. If you're listening to this on YouTube and you want to listen to the second part, you can go to www.the100th. That's TH at the end of 100th, monkeyradio.com, and click on the member. We keep it very good price, huh, Tom?
Yeah, very affordable, and help support Ramon and I and what we're doing.
Yeah.
Rick, where can people get your books and everything out? Your website is richardallenmiller.com.
Yes. And I'm everywhere. If you Google my name, watch what happens next on that one. You'll find I've been around a long, long time. And you know, you've got books of my that in your library that you didn't even know I wrote. Like, Anarchist Cookbook. How about Magical Mushroom Handbook? Or Legal Highs. Or
you wrote Anarchist Cookbook?
I was one of the 4 authors. Yes.
Are you kidding?
I'm that old. You know, my contribution. You take a light bulb and you drill a hole in the bottom of it, and you let the air back in, and then you put a little tiny spoonful of gasoline in it, and you put the light bulb back in place. It will light up any party faster than anything. And your best weapon of choice, the ones Navy SEALs use, because if you're carrying weapons, that will become the first big bullseye that everybody wants, even before your water or your food. They're going to want your weapon. And so we carry water pistols with ammonia. And let me tell you, it works really good for me, even rabid dogs. And if you have a crowd or a mob, you know, a water cannon with a good quart of ammonia stops everything. You know, working down the river in Party Hardy with water cannon, you get that full of ammonia. And, of course, when you're out of ammunition, there will always be household products around.
There you go. We'll leave off with that. Little parting advice from our guest, Mr. Richard Allen Miller.
I got high off some of the recommendations there back in the 90s. The banana peel stuff was pretty good, actually.
You know what? Actually, bananas was a joke. I wrote Legal Highs, and later it was called Magical and Ritual Use of Herbs. And you know what the cool part is? Because I assigned rituals to them, it classified them as sacraments and kept those 28 herbs out of the Uniform Controlled Substance Act.
Really?
Yeah. I was a very naughty boy for Navy. I did all of this, you know, flying the flags, because FDA is crazy. They put this restricted list on for baby Hawaiian wood rose and kola nut and guarana and what is that? Sweet flag, you know, with BR Cerones and yeah.
Crazy. Okay, well, join us in the second hour, guys. Condemnation without investigation is a height of ignorance.
The love you deny is the pain you carry.
We'll see you in hour 2.
Yes, this song is called Be the Change, inspired by the words of Mahatma Gandhi, who live for peace and not violence, and told us to be the change we wish to see in the world. Freedom's calling, I feel the fire that's deep inside us. Everybody wants change, but tell me who will guide us. To the leaders that pass away, put up your lighters. It's a beautiful struggle, but it cannot divide us. We're the ones that we've always been waiting for. See yourself in the mirror and open up the door. Walk through it and feel the love throughout your pores. Be the light, life's purpose is to feel joy. Metaphysical, lyrical, saying nothing but truth. The only one to make change is walking in your shoes. Be the example, don't complain about the news. Making music and serving the world with the loo. Now you can be the same, or you can be the change. Find strength from inside, break through the chains. No one to blame, nothing to prove. You create your reality, it's up to you. Be the change
that you wanna see in the world. Like Gandhi, live for peace, aspire to peace. Someone who fights for the beliefs, like Martin Luther King. Aspire to be that Lord, that light, like Christ, life for the moment indeed. And if you believe in Jehovah, Allah, Buddha, Krishna, it's love to me.
My soul yearns for peace in a world that's flooded with war. History's littered with body scar, trying to settle the score and maintain an archaic platform of power and greed. People fight for land out of survival and need. So I'm killing my television and I'm planting the seed to fill my head with knowledge that I'm seeing receive. Due to the media propaganda, killing my creed. Know what don't kill me, make me stronger, feeling straight when I bleed. Fight for interest before it's attached to feet. They try to say you anything in this world, nothing for free. Land, air, fire, and water, they keep up in the ante, while the anti-proletariat told the powers to be. But we keep fighting, surviving and thriving, recycling and rhyming. We constantly inclining, we see through the lying and prying. They tactically keep trying to keep you from asking the why.
Be the change that you wanna see in the world. Like Gandhi, live for peace, aspire to be. Someone who fights for the beliefs, like Martin Luther King. Aspire to be that Lord, that light, like Christ, life for the moment indeed. And if you believe in Jehovah, Allah, Buddha, Krishna, it's love to me.
We find solutions, different possibilities, creating organizations like Aspire to Be, inspiring young minds to see, building life skills, nurturing creativity, fulfilling the youth's basic needs, listening actively, teaching the tools to succeed, positive role models, we plant the seed, the roots drink the water which feed the tree, someone help me, giving back to